Bitcoin's alive, what you gon' do? Mempool fees are high. Ordinal. Where does it stop? Nobody knows. It's a revolution. Ayy, Bitcoin is the one, no substitution. Ayy, with Shizzy and Yagobi, it's Ordinal Revolution.
Welcome back to Ordinal Revolution. My name is Shizzy. On this channel, we cover the entire Bitcoin Ordinal ecosystem. What is up, guys? We have an amazing show for you guys today. It is probably something I've been looking forward to, I want to say, for like 9 months now. Me and Yagobi were talking, and about 9 months ago, we sat down and we were like, hey, who's some like big guys in space that you would love to interview? And I think the first name on my list was Blockamoto. And today we have Blockamoto. We have the guy who invented Bitmaps. I mean, Bitmap is our damn logo, right? So we've been excited for this for a long time. When we first discovered Bitmaps, it was kind of like, we felt like kids in a candy store, right? We were running around trying to get as many blocks as we can. We really learned a lot by doing that. I learned more in Bitcoin from really getting involved in the Bitmaps than I did previously in really anything. So that was a big moment for me. But I'm really excited for this episode. We're gonna get right into it. Let me bring up my partner here, as always, Mr. Yagobi. What's up, buddy?
What is up? What is up?
What's going on? So today we have the guy, man, the king of blocks, as I like to call him. But we got Blockamoto. What can you tell me about this man?
Yeah, you hit the nail on the head in terms of, like, I think like a unintentional possibly way to educate people that were coming into Bitcoin Ordinals about how Bitcoin works from a basics fundamental level, right? About how the blocks they get mined, transactions get mined through them, and all this stuff. And then, the counting of the blocks, how they're relevant, how each block is relevant, stuff like that, transactions in the block and stuff. And it really, in my opinion, I agree with you. I think that, like, it's just a simplistic way to kind of educate that part about how Bitcoin works to, people that are coming into the space. So, aside that, like, it built out this really big community that just seemed to have a lot of like ambition all of a sudden about like building like this metaverse type of environment using Bitcoin and using bitmap theory. So there's a lot of things that really Bitmap sparked in terms of ambition and motivation with builders, right, in the space. And then I feel like we definitely reached like this peak of Bitmap craze, and kind of came down to this area of where some people forgot about Bitmap a little bit, but builders were still building as they always have been. I think it was just more of the community energy kind of died down a little bit, and it seems like possibly some of that's coming back, right? And it's always an exciting thing because that's part of our journey as a show here.
100%. Yeah, I mean, with people coming into space like Bitmap Emporium and Bitmap.community and what they're doing with Ben Schiller and his project with a Bitmap 420. There's a lot of different like projects that are building now that are Bitmap centric, right? And that's really big. And it kind of takes this kind of boring moment in time where price action is kind of very, very not good, for people to really put their heads down and keep building, because you're not worried about the price anymore. You just want to build something cool and something with an already built community. That's the best thing about Bitmap. It's decentralized metaverse, right? Built on top of Bitcoin that anyone can build on. And I think that's the biggest thing for me. But yeah,
I agree with that, man. I agree. So I'm ready to kind of let Bitoshi kind of come in and me throw some questions at him, because I definitely want to pick his brain a little bit.
Let's get it. Blockamoto, welcome to the show, my friend.
Hello. Thank you for having me. It's been a long time coming, and I've really wanted to do this for a while, and I'm glad we're finally here.
Awesome. Thanks for joining us.
So I guess we'll get started with if someone's living under a rock, you can kind of take as far back as possible. Who is Bitoshi Blockamoto?
Yeah, so okay, Bitoshi Blockamoto, that's me, that's my name. It goes back to obviously the idea of Satoshi Nakamoto. That's where the name comes from. When I was studying Bitcoin and learning everything about it, it really blew my mind in how it was forever. That's the main thing, or it's about as eternal as you can get in the digital space. So that really stuck with me for a long time. I was trying to explain that to people, as you know, everyone who had listened. I was trying to educate. You know, this is Bitcoin. This is why it's important. It's not just, you know, sending money around. It's, you can have messages on it. You can do, there's all sorts you can do with it. But a lot of times that just falls on deaf ears until until I figured out how to really package this. And talking about it like education, talking about Bitmap as education is a perfect perfect way to talk about it, because I went through that myself. That's the journey that I went through. I learned everything I could about Bitcoin, to the point where I could kind of simplify it or distill it down to a seed that kind of expands once you touch on it, if you know what I mean. So yeah, and the name Bitoshi Blockamoto is very simple. It's bits and blocks, and mixed with the idea of Satoshi Nakamoto. Yeah, and I tried to keep my ego out of it as much as possible. That's why I try and stay, you know, keep my real identity out of it, and try and follow the path that Satoshi took. It's not always easy, and you know, eventually I'll be able to, once everything is ready and done, I'll be able to step back and just be, you know, a member of the community that is building on Bitmap, or maybe even just fully step back, depending on where we're at. But yeah, that's a little bit of history. Yeah, I was a resident in the metaverse, I guess you could say, before I started Bitmap, and so I was studying it. This is on the Ethereum side of things. I was, you know, figuring out what does it mean to live in the metaverse, to own land. That on those previous platforms, it wasn't related to Bitcoin blocks or Ethereum blocks or anything like that. It was simply, you know, these are some coordinates. This is a map, and you can have space on this map, which is really cool. I found that blew my mind, and just knowing that the data of that was immutably on Ethereum, it couldn't be messed with, and you know, anything that's in the game world in that sense it can be traded outside of the game. That's, you know, that's why Ethereum, you know, Vitalik stated that's one of the reasons Ethereum was created, because of his experiences with World of Warcraft, where, you know, I think one of his items got banned and he could never use it again, and that kind of, yeah, that was a big experience for him, because he put so much effort into getting this item. You know, just things like that. Yeah, that's a little bit of history.
Yeah. So you mentioned kind of Ethereum and more of like the centralized approach of creating like these metaverses and stuff. What made you think about using, you know, the way that Bitcoin blocks were, you know, produced and minted, and correlating that to, and correlating that to, you know, a distribution of kind of digital asset property ownership? Because that's pretty clever, because at that point you don't leave it to like a centralized entity to issue out like what each person gets. It's actually issued out by the miners, right? Essentially. So when did that idea come, and when was that light bulb moment for you?
Yeah, so a lot of things came together really in that final phase where I actually launched Bitmap. It was quite a long, about a 6-month journey from when I realized, when I put everything down that I was working on beforehand, any client work and real work that I was doing, and just said, okay, this is something, there's something here. I need to focus on this, put all of my energy into figuring this out. And it started from the idea of compression. How do we take a metaverse and not just the, you know, previously on the Ethereum side, sure, the coordinate data of the metaverse would be on chain, but the items and things like that would typically be off chain. So it started with how can we compress for example, voxels and you know, how can we get things on chain? It turns out it's not so hard on Bitcoin. It's just a matter of, you know, small file size for 3D models and stuff like that. But for the metaverse, you know, that it was how can I take an entire world and put it on Bitcoin? And that led me to studying, you know, what's the block size of Bitcoin, how much data can you fit on a block and all that, and kind of went round and round with that until I realized visually in my head that Bitcoin blocks had a spatial element to them. The data from the Satoshis and how much Satoshis there are, you know, they had a fully visual element to them. And once I realized that, that led me on the search to, you know, at first I was trying to build it. How can we visualize this and build it myself? But I'm not, you know, I wouldn't say I'm a talented developer or anything like that. So when I was on my search for that, I found Bitfeed, which is the perfect representation of Bitcoin blocks. And that coincided with coming up with the schema to register these blocks, which originally was a JSON schema similar to BRC20, kind of modeled it after that. And then once those two came together with a little bit of help from, I'll give a shout out to Bitmapster right now. He helped me discover DID, which is kind of making a lot of waves now. When I found it, it was tagged as something called Web 5, which I was like, okay, we're on, where did Web 4 go? But that's all right. So DID is basically a schema for decentralized identities. So I kind of took inspiration from that and going down the path of compression. How can we take this schema that I originally created, which is like a JSON file? It had like an op code and all things like this in it, like P op, similar to BRC20. What don't we need? What can I take out of this to simplify it as much as possible? Like, we don't really need the P. We don't need all these things. All these things are kind of redundant because when you're running a search, you can just filter to .bitmap. And originally it was called BMP, the Bitmap Metaverse Protocol. And it was a friend of mine who recommended I change it to Bitmap. And that just made a whole lot of sense. So you could say Bitoshi Blockamoto is not one person, it's multiple people coinciding with like lots of ideas. But yeah, they helped me along the way get to this point. It's a journey of compression, really.
Yeah. So you got to that part, right? And then what was the idea to just put, you know, the numbers dot bitmap? Like, how'd you get that to that point?
Yeah, so with the original JSON structure, it was simply we related the so I took the block height, and that was included in it. So it'd say like height equals I can't remember exactly how it was now, but you know, 0 equals 0. And then I included, like, you could even have like a message and some metadata in the JSON, but I decided that's going too far ahead. And once that's on chain, that's immutable. You can't change it. So it's just simplifying it, really. And the numbers come from simply the block height. So when I was ready, once and I actually released a white paper with the JSON structure, which some people have seen. And I was trying to get that into the hands of people at like a Bitcoin Miami, I think it was, to try and launch it there as it was. And I had a sale lined up for the first one, with the JSON structure at ord.city. And I actually postponed it for about a week once I figured out we can't go with this structure. I'd already minted the first few, like 0 and 1, and I'd given a few out to some close friends. So once I realized it could be simpler and it would be much better if we do this, I just scrapped that and I said, okay, let's postpone this for about a week. And then I inscribed 0.bitmap, and then I inscribed 1.bitmap, and then a few more for my friends, and then that was it. And then we launched it at ord.city, or that was the first real auction sale, and I went and found everybody I could in the Bitcoin space and just tried to spread the message as far and wide as possible.
That's awesome. Yeah.
Yeah.
And then so you got them up, got them running, you know, they're able to be inscribed, and then now you have to get them like on the indexers, right? And I get well, we know you reached out to Benny. What was that conversation like? Was he hard to get a hold of, and what was he? Yeah, what was that like?
Yeah, so in the early days, and actually before I launched Bitmap, I wanted to release it with an indexer, with an inscriber, and everything ready, but I just didn't have the capacity to do that myself. Some of my friends who were working in the Ethereum space, who build, you know, doing their own thing with indexing, you know, things to do with rare pepes and stuff like that. I asked for their help, but they were busy. They were, you know, so I was basically looking around, begging anyone around me. And once it released, I released without an indexer. In fact, that's not quite true. The only reason I released it when I did is because I realized that Unisat had a text search function, which would allow you to filter down to .bitmap.
Yeah.
So once I realized that, that's when, and I had I discovered the bit feed around, you know, quite close to that time, and changed it to the bitmap structure. All that kind of coincided at the same time. So like I knew it was ready at that point because those were all the ingredients we needed. And it is very, you know, lo-fi or whatever you want to call it. But yeah, once I realized that you could search for your bitmap and you could verify it manually, I knew it was ready. And then that was how everyone was doing it in the early days. Everyone would check the numbers, they'd search it, they'd see if it was available or not, or if it had already been inscribed, and then they'd inscribe based on that. So it was all very, that was quite fun, those early days. And then,
so basically you had like a like organic basic, the most basic level of indexing with Unisat search, basically.
That's right.
Were you pointing to the images with Bitfeed for marketplaces? How did that work? Did you use their API, or how did that work?
So that was simply my earliest post on Twitter, and kind of the trend with those 0.bitmap, 1.bitmap, kind of going from there. I posted an image of the inscription 0.bitmap and a picture of the Bitfeed layout, and that's how it started. It was just a side-by-side picture on Twitter, just so that people kind of had a way to express it visually. And I didn't expect that would become, you know, the de facto way. In fact, I mean, I kind of did, but there were lots of discussions in the early days, like, are we going to use the VByte layout, or are we going to use the Satoshi layout? A lot of experimentation, and it was like it's like an archaeological journey. We're all kind of dusting off the Bitcoin blockchain to figure out what's there, and kind of, that was all very fun. And I was still begging for indexes because I was like, okay, this is starting to grow fast now. It was very clear within the first few days that it was exponential. You know, the first day was a couple inscriptions, me sending it to my friends and anyone who would listen. Most of my friends didn't listen, but I sent anyway. I mean, now they're listening, but and yeah, I would. I was basically begging for indexes, and as it kind of grew exponentially fast, and more people would get, you know, figuring it out. That's when I can't remember if I reached out to Benny or he reached out to me. I think it was through, in fact, it was through SMB got in contact with me, connected me with Benny regarding the indexing, and then very quickly Benny built the indexer that came to be the main indexer from that point. Yeah, and that's kind of how it went down, and we tried to launch. We launched parceling quite soon after that. That was in the original white paper. It was parceling, and it was also it was supposed to be launched at the same time, but how it went down and how, just to keep it simple, we started with the the districts to begin with.
Yeah. Do you think that the parceling was a little bit rushed? Because it seemed like that. I remember those days because I think you guys used the block runners tool. I think it was mscribe, and you guys rolled out the parceling with the tap function and stuff like that. But it seemed like it wasn't getting the same reception as Bitmap did initially.
Yeah, so back then I didn't know about parent-child. I didn't know that was on the horizon. So in the early days, it was a matter of how can we do this without parent and child inscriptions, or how can we create a parent and child relationship from these bitmaps? And that was a conversation with block runners and Benny before mscribe was a thing. Block runners, they were, they were one of the first people to cover Bitmap. Around about 100 inscriptions. So that was within, I think, maybe the first week, even, or week or two. So, and they were there at the original auction as well. They heard about it and they went for the 1.bitmap. I'm not sure if they got it. I think it was an anonymous bidder. I have no idea who it is. Maybe someone can tell me, but so we were working together trying to, it was basically me, Benny, and the block runners working together on this concept, and Bitmap dev at the time building Bitmap land, bitmap.land. So yeah, we were kind of working together on that. We were building bitmap.land, they were building mscribe. And originally they were going to kind of come together, like the parceling tool that later came through block runners was going to be implemented on bitmap.land, and vice versa. We could have the map on mscribe. But things didn't really go as planned in that respect. We couldn't come to, we couldn't come to an agreement, to put it simply, on that, but we won't get into any of that. And so things kind of went the way they did. There was a divergence, but the parceling tool from mscribe was built, and we built our own parceling tool on bitmap.land. They did the same thing, and it was the conversation between me and Benny regarding how do we do this parent-child relationship without causing. Because Benny realized that if we do this, there could be an issue where people could inscribe all of their parcels as someone is buying it, as the buy transaction is in the mempool and as that's going through. So you could be buying a bitmap that would be full of parcels, but then by the time you get it, the parcels have been inscribed.
So you'd own nothing, basically.
Yeah. So we had to come up with a solution to that, you know, my thinking was maybe we use lock time or some, but now I didn't quite understand it enough to really, I don't think that would have worked. I think that's not really, it wouldn't have worked. And Benny had this thing, he said, you know, he's been working on this thing for staking. Back then it was called staking, similar to Ethereum staking, but a way to where you'd be able to stake on layer 1 of Bitcoin. That was the concept. But what it is what would go on to be known as tapping, sending the parcel to yourself, or sending an inscription to yourself. It's essentially a signaling mechanism. So what that would do with parceling is it would signal that you know, it would signal that once you've inscribed the parcels, you tap your district, which is the parent to the parcels. So that would signal that that action is complete, meaning that if you were to inscribe parcels without tapping and then sell them on the market, they would be, if they're not tapped, then those parcels wouldn't be valid. So therefore, you wouldn't be able to. It basically cuts out that problem. So that was a solution of tapping. That's why that was implemented in the early days, which now we're at the point where parent and child is undeniably a much better system than tapping. So yeah, so now we're kind of at a crossroads in that respect. But yeah, that's the story of the early days of parceling and tapping and how that came to be.
That's awesome.
It was definitely early, like you said. I think if I would have known about parent and child back then, I would have held off for that.
Yeah, I don't think many people knew that was going to roll out so soon, but it did. And I mean, that definitely solved the parceling issue. So let's kind of fast forward a little bit here. Like, you know, Bitmap had its like ascent. It did very well. You had builders coming over from XRP, you had builders coming over from Ethereum, trying to see what this Bitmap theory was about. Bitmap started to get up in floor price. They reached like an all-time high. Things are crazy. People like, you know, you mentioned that like, you know, you try not to bring your ego into it, but I think like all humans have this, you know, have a natural kind of a little bit of a weakness. Like I know I do, everybody does, to where like if you're a founder of something huge, then, you know, you're going to feel great, you know? And it seemed like, you know, the whole space was kind of like Bitoshi, you know, great. This is awesome. You created all this great stuff. And then you kind of stepped away because there was a little bit of, you know, Twitter stuff that always happens, right? You stepped away, went quiet for a while, and Bitmap kind of started to do his own thing. Right. And you have all these builders spread out everywhere. And yeah, now you got a point to where like what happens with Bitmap? You got people building on Bitcoin layer 2s, you got people building on layer 1, you have all this stuff. And I think the reason why they're even able to build away from each other is because the way that you decided in the end to make Bitmap simple, like the way that the protocol is with just the numbers and .bitmap. But now like you've kind of came back into this place, right? And so what made you come back? Because you were quiet for a while.
Yeah, so yeah, regarding the ego thing, I'll touch on that quickly. I mean, as with any human, the first deadly sin is pride. Mm-hmm. So that's the thing that I have to really be careful of, because that can lead me to really mess things up, make a mess of things. So I have to check my pride and check my ego, but I'm not always successful at that. And sometimes things need to be said, but sometimes, you have to be careful the way you go about it, and treading on eggshells a lot of times. So yeah, really, I mean, the point where I stepped back, I would say this was, it's happened a few times, but I came up with a different idea, a different protocol, which you may remember was called TIT.
Oh yeah,
Yeah, we remember that.
which caused a lot of controversy. It stood for "This is the tweet," and it was basically a simple way to, in a similar way to Bitmap, you can simply index it. It's a simple way to index a tweet like post on Ordinal. So, like you know, with Unisat, you could go type in tit colon, and then it'll come up with all of the posts. And then that was indexed very fast when I released it, but the name was very controversial. Yeah. It was very yeah, so that kind of caused a whole stir in the community, and I thought it was kind of funny. So and people like Adrian Dittman were involved back then. So I mean, if you know, like, Mr. Not Elon Musk, they were very they all had very strong opinions about it. So I thought it'd be funny to kind of change the name and say, okay, I hold my hands up. Yeah, it's a bad name. So I changed the name to Y, just to simplify it even further and kind of play on the whole the name of X. And yeah, I don't think that helped at all. I mean, there was a lot of support for it. So that's the thing that people back then don't realize, is as much as there was controversy, there was also a lot of support for it. It was indexed instantly by Bitoshi, who worked on the Genie data platform. It was a thing that people really liked, but also a lot of people really didn't like. So at that point, that's when I had to kind of take a step back. Took I'd say a long walk, best way to put it, and just stepped away from the internet and just kind of, okay, it was clear that that the community wanted to take hold of this thing and kind of, it was time for the community to step forward, which they'd already been, very, that they were the leaders of Bitmap. So the community are the most important force in Bitmap. So really, that was when the community took hold of Bitmap, and yeah, and then it kind of went in many different directions. Many people have different ideas of what Bitmap should be. There's the idea of what needs to be on chain and what should be off chain. That's a whole debate, and there's lots of avenues that people go with that. And at the same time, there's lots of scams. There's lots of things that crop up that use the Bitmap name just to to raise capital, and that was a real struggle for me to see, to be honest. Like, I don't like seeing the name being used just to raise capital for which isn't going to go anywhere. And as I spent a little bit of time working for TAP, a few months, and that's about the only kind of capital that I had. 2 months I was working for TAP, and then even that was like, I had to step away from that because it became kind of a conflict of interest for me, where I felt it was taking Bitmap away from my original vision and kind of more towards a centralized way of doing things, which I didn't really, I wasn't really happy with that. Mostly because they have a lot of, they have venture capital and they have people to answer to and everything like that. So that's not to say there's anything wrong with that. That's just, in my position that I'm in, that's not right for me. So
yeah, you're not going to feel good about it because you were the one that came up with the original thesis of it.
Yeah. And it's just simple things like, can you put together a PDF roadmap and so our investors have it. No, I don't really want to do that. I want to focus on my community. That's what I want to focus on. So yeah, and that's not Benny. That's just that's the way the game works when you're working.
Yeah, nature of the beast.
Yeah. So that's all well and good. So I took a step back from that, and really the only reason I'm coming back, and the only reason I'm trying to release what I'm releasing now, with which we'll talk about, is I've seen, I've had, I'd say, best way to put it, I had like visions or projected into the future what would happen if Bitmap isn't done properly, or if it's taken over by a central entity. And it's the whole reason I started this in the first place, is the metaverse, it can be a tool of freedom, or it can be, the biggest super weapon available to superpowers to, it can be used at the very extremes, if we're talking about techno future, for enslavement. In many different ways you can think about that going, like AI is another example of something, a super weapon like that. So really the only reason for me to be public is to make sure that Bitmap is executed properly, in the sense that anybody can build on it, and there's no, it takes after Bitcoin, in the sense that, like, Satoshi's vision was that if Bitcoin can be controlled by a central entity or taken over or anything like that, then it's a failed project. So that's the way I see Bitmap, and that's why it has to mirror Bitcoin and the rules of Bitcoin as much as possible, and find as many parallels as possible. And that, so yeah, I saw a lot of things that that could happen. So really all I'm here to do is build the thing that's going to last forever. So right now I'm working on the Atlas, which is it's a Bitmap browser, to put it simply. Right now it's a block browser. The version that's released, the first version, which is a block explorer that exists as an inscription on Ordinals. So you can type in any block number and you can see the block info from that block. You can't see the transactions because that endpoint's not available yet on through ordinal recursion, and that's how it works. It uses recursion to get the data.
Okay, gotcha. So what would be difference between this and Bitfeed?
Yeah, so I mean, currently it's modeled after mempool .space, how that works. The main difference is it exists itself on chain. So the Atlas is an inscription that's on chain.
Gotcha.
So it can't be removed. So as long as the as long as you're following the rules of ordinals, the recursive endpoints, it doesn't even need to be through ord. As long as those rules are followed, then you can access the same data. So yeah, the difference is it's on chain.
You gotcha. And Bitfeed is basically their website's hosted on some server, right? That's Web 2 style, is what you're saying.
That's right. Yeah. So my goal is to get as much as possible on the chain, so that and not everything has to be on chain, but the core does, and yeah, so that gotcha. I don't have to keep stepping in and saying things like we should do it this way, not that way.
Yeah,
I need to to hold that.
And that goes kind of against, or that falls in line with the question I was about to ask, because you said, not wanting Bitmap to be centralized, and if someone gains control over it. But what about the people that say that, well, that's what you're trying to do right now? Like, what would you say to them when they respond that way?
What do you mean by that? Sorry.
If they're saying, well, that's what you're doing right now, is to say Bitmap has to be this way or whatever, what's your response to that? If someone says, well, you say you don't want it to be centralized, but that's what we're seeing right now. I'm not saying that's the case, because I don't agree with that. I think that Bitmap wasn't finished, and that's the reason why you're back. But like for someone to say that, what would be your response? That Would it be that what I just said?
Yeah, I mean that I totally get that point of view, because even like I'm gonna have to come out and with my tail between my legs regarding parceling and how that has to change now, and and we're gonna have to find consensus about that, which is the community has to agree on it, and if the community don't agree with my vision, that's fair enough. If then it wasn't a strong enough vision. That's kind of the way I see it. But yeah, I'm here to do everything I can to build it in a way where there doesn't have to be me saying these things and trying to steer it in the right direction. It shouldn't have to be that way. It should be solid to the point where it can't be messed with. Anyone can build it in any direction they want, but the core structure of it is sound. So that, yeah, we need to get to that point, and I don't think we're there yet. But the ingredients are there, and I'm basically here now to release them, and I'm working on them very hard right now.
That's awesome. So, like, you're obviously you've been building here in Ordinals and Bitmap for a while. Like, what's your what are you thinking for the future of Ordinals? Not just Bitmap. Do you think that we really going to like a tear here in the next couple months? Not just price wise, but just like the building that's happening. Are you like kind of big on runes or anything like that? Just kind of the normal everything that's happening here.
I think I fall in line with the same view as Casey, in that it's shitcoinery, to put it bluntly, which is fine. Like degens will degen, but that's what happened in Ethereum, and there's a lot of potential for corruption and things to go badly. But I wouldn't say that's really my avenue, or I don't really have any say in what goes on there. In terms of Ordinals, I think they took a step back and they worked on runes. That was their focus. I think they just wanted. I think Casey wanted to do it in the best way possible, so that it wasn't done by somebody else in a worse way. I think that's really what he was doing. So I understand that, and I think it was executed very, very well. I think it's a very good protocol. Yeah, I think it's cool. But really, that's not my bag, I'd say. But I think I've seen Raf focus on Ordinals recently and really come back to the what does Ordinals need. I made a lot of noise recently to try and get their attention, be like, hello, we're here, we need your help on the Ord side. And I'm kind of glad to see that like Raf has been paying attention, probably begrudgingly, but he knows that Ord is, and in his words, it's 90% finished or 99% finished. So once Ord is finished, or all the holes are plugged in, and all the recursive endpoints that are there, like we'll be able to do Bitmap flawlessly. And now I see that as happening, and he's everything on his roadmap now is going to enable Bitmap to be fully on chain, and yeah, it's all happening. So I'm very happy about that, and I think we're at the point in the halving, after the halving, where things have slumped. No one's really So I think we're just at the start of it. We're at the point now where we're in between the two peaks. That's the way I see things.
The normal halving lasts about 500 days, so we're in the very early days of that 500. I guess my last question for you would be, do you get reached out a lot to? Because I mean, there's a lot of people building here in Bitmaps, whether it be you know, bitmap.community or like bitmap 420, and then you know you have bitmap Emporium. Do these any of these builders, have they reached out to you at all for your opinion on anything like that?
Yeah, yeah, I get a lot of DMs from builders and from community members and you know all sorts of people. Yeah, and I try to, a lot of times I miss messages and things fall down, and you know there's a lot. So, but I try to answer as many people as possible and you know speak to as many builders as possible. Sometimes it's very difficult. And there's a lot of people building, so yeah, it's kind of crazy.
Okay, so let's get a little bit back to you talked about Atlas. That's part of your solution, and I think you have other solutions. Can you get into the other part? Maybe that ties into the recursive endpoints, maybe not, I'm not sure, but if you could talk about that.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, so the recursive endpoints, really important. So right now we have the for the block data, we don't have recursive endpoints that allow us to fetch transaction data. So that's a big deal when we're talking Bitmap, because that's foundational to Bitmap.
Okay.
And I think Ordinals, it's not so much, it hasn't been so much a priority for them because they're not working with the transaction data in that way, and they have the Explorer to do that, which is still, you know, fetching the on-chain data, but the Explorer is an app in itself. Whereas what I want to do is create the on-chain inscription, which fetches this transaction data through recursion and, you know, the inputs and outputs, and go right down to the granular level, so that we can have basically the coordinates system for Bitmap, so that you can attach things to any point on your Bitmap through recursion and through through parent-child inscriptions and all these things, so that it can't be messed with, so that it's there. Yeah, so the recursive, the missing points are the transaction data and meta protocol as well is another feature of Ordinals that I've made sure that Raf included that on the roadmap as a recursive endpoint. So I think that's going to happen, and that's very important for the future of parceling as well.
Did you get a commitment from them on this? Because you know, I can't imagine Casey getting extremely excited about bitmap theory, just because, like, I feel like you kind of talked about it. I feel like he's the type of person that if he didn't create it, he kind of, you know, doesn't have as much interest in it. But you were petitioning for this pretty hard. I got to commend you for that, by the way, because it showed that you actually cared. And I think there's some people out there that might think that you might not care about, like, you know, the overall communities, you know, how things end up for them. But I could see from that was something that you were passionate about. So is this something that they committed to, this is going to happen, or is it still up in the air?
So he, in the last coding session that they did last week, it was, he created a roadmap, or basically a roadmap of everything to do with Ordinals, and he included everything that needed to be done. So I wouldn't say it was a commitment, but it was a very clear indication that was going to be done. But as a you know, I'd say insurance policy, I'm working with Bitmap still at the moment. We have a fork of Order that we're working on, just so we can Smart. You know, experiment with things, and make sure that, you know, that, and kind of push things, and we'll be able to do like pull requests to Ord as well once we've got things figured out on our end. So actually, that I think, you know, helping them on the development side is a good thing.
100%. That's probably the best thing that you did, honestly. And I'm not trying to, you know, tell you what to do or anything, but that allows you to test and then see kind of trial and error, and then if you serve them a layup, then really what reason other than them making something up to not implement it? You know what I mean? So I think that was really smart. Good job on that. Yeah, or at least getting it done. I know it's not done yet, but
yeah, we're making a lot of progress. A lot of progress on that. But yeah, I didn't want to just be asking and waiting, but also I don't want to move away from Ordinals consensus, because if we create our own thing and then move everyone to that, then it creates a tension and conflict, which I don't want at all. And and regarding you touched on that, Casey's feelings about it, or the way I see it, and I can't speak for Casey, but I think he sees what he's created with Ordinals as Bitmap, if you know what I mean. Like RareSat, there was a campaign that RareSats are the metaverse, and I fully understand where they're going with that, in the sense that Bitmap is coming from the block data and then going down to the Satoshi level in terms of resolution. When you zoom into your bitmap, you get down to the Satoshi level. And Ordinals itself is the codification of where every Satoshi is at any point in time. So it's kind of, once you get down to the highest resolution, it's a very similar thing. I mean, Bitmap is built on Ordinals for that reason. So I understand like there might be, but that's is kind of thing. But yeah, I mean, that's kind of what Bitmap is trying to do. It's trying to expose that. But the difference is Bitmap allows anybody to claim any block, whereas Ordinals, you can only have an inscription on a Satoshi that's in your wallet, which, if you're talking about a metaverse, that creates a lot of empty space, let's say. So yeah, and the biggest difference is that you've got this where the Satoshis are now, which is every Satoshi that's in existence, but Bitmap also deals with every place a Satoshi has ever been. So every single block, all of the block data going back to the beginning of Bitcoin. So I think that's a very different angle to approach it. It's like Casey took the bottom up approach and I took the top down approach. And I think that's, they're both needed for what we're both creating. And hopefully we can, we can have a proper conversation over a beer one day and hash these things out. But until then, things are the way they are.
Yeah, this has been a great interview and we're coming up on the hour. But like my last question for you is, let's say that none of this gets implemented and, Bitmap is what it is right now today. Does Bitmap continually live on, or do you feel like it fades away without any updates or changes to it?
I think the community is strong, is very strong. And I know that my vision for it is kind of straight down the middle. Like I know exactly where I need to go for the core of it, but I don't think it's only me that has that insight at this point. I think there's many people that understand where it needs to go. So it's kind of like a hydra. If I was to disappear, somebody else would crop up with the vision and take things forwards. But and I don't think for people to build on Bitmap on the current, everything that's laid out so far is very strong. That's why people can build on it in such a way. So I don't think it needs me per se, but I think for it to be the best it can be and for it to last as long as possible without the potential for it to be corrupted at this early point, that's kind of that's where I'm at, and that's why I'm building Atlas, so that I don't need to do that anymore.
Yeah. And I mean, you're building a tool, right? And there's a lot of people, other people can build tools as well, and that's the best part about Bitmap is anyone can build anything, and that's awesome. But it's been an amazing show, Blockamoto, man. Thank you so much. We really appreciate you. This is kind of the part of the show where I kind of give you the stage, talk to our community. You can kind of really say anything you want. The stage is yours.
Yeah, cool. So, okay. Yeah, there's a few things. I mean, first of all, I'm grateful for everybody who's built on Bitmap and everybody who believes in the vision and sees what I can see, and you guys especially for covering it, and your logo is fire, and yeah, I love you guys. And I'm just glad, because it could have been dead in the water. People could have, you know, my friends weren't really listening to me at first. So yeah, I've got to thank everybody for that. And I guess some alpha, or some, not really alpha, it's kind of out in the open, but I'm building an on-chain indexer which will allow us to you know, to have every bitmap and the ID on chain in a single place. And at the moment, figuring out a way for that to be kind of an automated process, or like an inscription in itself, so that anyone can run this on chain through Ordinals or through their Ord node, or however they do it. So that's a big thing, and that will enable a lot of things. The full scope of the Atlas, which is you know, to try to do what people are doing off chain, to do that on chain, and basically set the foundation and blueprint so that other people can do that, because I know that, and you know, I can't build a metaverse myself. You know, I can't build an entire metaverse. I just don't have the capacity to do it. But what I can do is set the foundational layers and give the blueprints for people to build going forwards. So yeah, that the Atlas is going to be a big deal once it's fully fleshed out. You're going to be able to browse inscriptions on it. You're going to be able to, it's basically going to be like Ordinals and Bitmap combined on chain. And the thing about Atlas, if you know Greek mythology, Atlas is the Titan who was condemned to hold up the cosmos for eternity after the War of the Titans. That's a very good metaphor for what this is going to be. It's
I
to
like
hold
it.
up Bitmap and yeah, the metaverse.
Yeah, I love that. Actually, it's really cool. That name.
Well, thank you so much, man, and we'll definitely have to do a round 2 for when this is out, and you know, you're ready to kind of really push it. Just you know, just let us know. Can't wait to have you back.
Yeah, thank you guys. I appreciate you for everything you do, covering the space for you know, since day one. I love your theme tune as well. I sing it every time it's on.
Awesome.
Thank you, sir. See you soon.
All right.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Absolutely amazing. Everything that I thought would be, plus you know, Blockamoto, he's really calm. It seemed like one of those chats where it was just really calm, fireside, just kind of hanging out, and it was fun.
Yeah, 100%. Like, I feel like he is like really, he was careful to kind of like, because I felt like he has a lot of pent up like emotions about it, just because, like, you know, this was the baby that he created, right? And it went kind of away, and now he's back. But I think that, like, he also understands that, like, the consensus doesn't have to agree with them, you know, and that's really important. Is because when a creator of a protocol is accepted that from like whatever he wants to continue with this, says if they don't accept it, they don't accept it, and that's okay. you know, but he still builds out. That shows that he has passion for it. So I'm excited to see what he has planned with Atlas and these tools. And, you know, I think we got to give him a, you know, kind of a round of hands, because this is the guy that created this theory, even though like he had his ups and downs. He's definitely still here. He could have just went away and tried to, you know, create something else, create another Twitter, create something to try to do something, make money or whatever. But no, he's back and he's trying to make Bitmap be able to last for as long as possible.
And it will. I'm very confident. I'm very confident in him, and I'm very confident in the definitely the ecosystem of builders building here. And we said it so many times before, if you're building something, why create your own community when you can walk into a community that's already built, right? And I think that's the biggest part of Bitmap, is like they embrace any builder that comes here. And they're embracing Blockamoto right now because he's building something special, it sounds like, with Atlas. So definitely excited for that, and definitely excited for the next time we have him on. So guys, if you like this, please hit the like button, please hit the subscribe. We appreciate you guys so much. Go check out ordinalrevolution.com. We have some of the best articles. And yeah, that's our show. See you soon.
Peace.
Ordinal Revolution. Let's go.